Hey everyone, this is Steve from GamersNexus.net, and today we're looking at this, a very big laptop. This is 8 pounds, more than my nerd arms can handle. You can see it's about 2 inches thick and about 17 inches wide. So we'll just put this down over here. This is a CyberPower Fangbook 3 HX7-300. It is very powerful, and it is built effectively as a desktop replacement, which we'll talk more about in a moment. The Fangbook 3 was put through our extensive battery testing, FPS testing, and thermal testing benchmark. So the processor in this thing is an Intel i7-3710MQ 3.5 GHz processor. That is a mouthful. And it's actually more powerful than a lot of desktop CPUs. It's very good with media production, like video rendering, and obviously good with gaming as a result of that. Other than the CPU, it's got a GTX 980M mobile version of NVIDIA's Maxwell GPUs. So the 980M, very powerful for gaming and media tasks. It's got 16 gigabytes of Ripjaw's 1600 megahertz RAM, that is DDR3 of course, and then it's got a 128 gigabyte SSD alongside a 1 terabyte 7200 RPM hard drive. This is not an M2 SSD, by the way. It's a proper SATA SSD, and the hard drive is a standard laptop hard drive at 7200 RPM. So very good specs, and the performance, of course, you would expect is also very good. Now, with most laptops, you have a few concerns. First of all, they sort of die over time with thermals, and that is especially because of thermal paste losing its efficacy as the laptop ages. It sort of dries out and needs to be replaced. And other than that, the fan bearings get worn, or the system is in too cramped of a space and is generating lots of heat over its whole life, which is what causes the compound to dry out. So these are our concerns with laptops. And a quick disclaimer, I can only test these things for a few weeks at a time before we have to publish a review. So I don't know what's going to happen in a year or two, but I can predict pretty well based on how the laptop is designed and how it is built. And that's what we're looking at right now. So inside, you can see I can just remove the back panel here, and we have instant access to the GPU, the CPU, the RAM, and the hard drives, or SSDs in this case. So that's basically everything. Anyone who's ever opened a laptop before knows how big this is. Normally you have to remove the back plate, you unscrew a bunch more screws under that, flip it over, remove the keyboard, and then after you remove the keyboard, you remove the chassis, you remove a protective plate that sits on top of the GPU and the CPU, and then you have access to the heat sinks that we want to mess with to redo the thermal paste. This one, you just remove the back and you can see everything. So that's pretty cool. Now, when we look at it, we can also see the thermal design. And the design of this laptop is very good, actually. It uses a single side intake vent where the fan is, so it's pulling air in from that vent from the side, and then it's got a bunch of bottom layer exhaust vents. Now, this means you can't ever lay it on a blanket or anything like that. You've basically got to use it on a solid surface all the time, but that's sort of expected with a desktop replacement. The laptop uses large heat pipes and a couple of large aluminum and copper heat sinks on top of the core components, so it should stay pretty cool, and actually does stay pretty cool in our thermal testing. And as long as you've got it on a solid surface, it'll exhaust all that heat. Now, this laptop is $2,000, it's $2,080 to be exact, and it is very similar to an MSI GT70. In fact, it uses the same chassis as the MSI GT70, if you're familiar with that one. What's different, though, unlike the GT70, this one ships with a GTX 980M and the SSD and a slightly better other components. At $2,080, you basically have a high-end gaming computer. You could build this system in desktop form for probably closer to $1,500, but it's marginally less portable than the CyberPower notebook we're looking at today. And I say marginally because this thing is big enough that you're really only going to be moving it between work and home and maybe a LAN event with friends. You're not going to be moving it around on an hour-to-hour basis. It's really not that portable. Let's look at the benchmarks. In terms of gameplay, you can see that the GTX 980M is capable of pushing 90 FPS in some titles and basically always stays at or above 60 FPS, which is very playable, in fact more powerful than a lot of desktop GPUs. That's because the 980M is in here with an i7 CPU. In terms of battery-operated gameplay, the 980M throttles itself very hard. This is an NVIDIA design, not a CyberPower design. The GPU will actually throttle down so that it is only powerful enough to push a constant 30 FPS, which is what they sort of define as a playable FPS when you're on battery. This helps preserve battery life by reducing the amount of power required by the GTX 980 because it is only working hard enough to push 30 FPS. When it is functioning on battery in our tests using pure gaming, meaning you're not doing anything else but gaming for the entire life of the battery, It lives about an hour and 24 minutes, not too bad, but also not fantastic. And when you're not gaming, it's only slightly longer than that. It pushes about 3 hours at the very, very best using efficient power control settings. Our thermal benchmark looks more like this. This shows the thermals of desktop GPUs along with the mobile GPU we just tested. And you can see it's about 4 degrees warmer than the GTX 980 reference video card you put in a desktop. Considering the amount of power this thing has and the cramped space it's in, that's pretty solid overall, because some of the Toshiba gaming laptops I've looked at push closer to 90 Celsius and then eventually burn out the thermal paste, and then you've got overheating problems for the rest of the laptop's life. So this thing theoretically will not run into that issue because of the thermal design that we looked at earlier, and because the 980M is a very efficient GPU. So what's the verdict here? Well, in terms of gaming, it's very high-end gaming performance. You can push this to a 1440p display and have no problem whatsoever playing games at that resolution. And it's basically a desktop. It is truly a desktop replacement. This thing is not a laptop in the sense we normally think of them. It's not ultra portable, and you probably will have to buy a new backpack for it, to be honest, because it doesn't fit in a lot of backpacks that I have for conventions. That said, it is very powerful for media production. It rendered 2-minute, 28 megabit per second videos in about 2 minutes. And that's pretty revolutionary for people who produce a lot of media content. At $2,080, the value is actually very good compared to other laptops on the market, MSI's in particular. And the gaming power, the performance, is also very good. What you lose is portability. So this isn't something I can review for you. You need to decide, how portable does my laptop need to be? And if it's not too portable and it can effectively be a desktop, do I really want a laptop instead of a desktop? In other words, is this something you're bringing to the office or bringing to LAN events or something like that? I probably wouldn't use this laptop for school if you're one of those people, because it's really not portable enough for that. You're not going to want to lug it out of a backpack and put it on a desk, whatever. It's not good for that. You want something skinnier and a little shorter. But if you want a 17-inch screen for media production, for high-end gaming, and you can put it where a desktop normally goes, this is very good value. The frame rates are great, and CyberPower has a pretty solid warranty program. So that is the CyberPower Fangbook 3. Check links in the description below for full review and the benchmark charts, and I will see you all next time. Peace.